Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. So this is trip 4, day 2, part 2. Micah chapter 3. Leaders and prophets rebuked. Then I said, listen, you leaders of Jacob, you rulers of Israel. Should you not embrace justice? You who hate good and love evil, who tear the skin from my people and the flesh from their bones, who eat the people's flesh, strip off their skin and break their bones in pieces, who chop them up like meat for the pan, like flesh for the pot. Then they will cry out to the Lord, but he will not answer them. At that time he will hide his face from them because of the evil they have done. Because of what? Because of the evil they have done. Keyword is done. What you do does affect you, whether you have faith or not. True faith means you're scrambling to do what's right. A weak faith allows people to keep sinning. We see in John 8, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. So it starts off by saying, should you not embrace justice? It's saying, should you not be morally precise to the best of your ability and embrace justice? And it also has implications on dating, right? Should you not be dating the righteous and the just? Not people with blood money, people who play stupid, people who may seem to be nice, but are conforming to various agendas, social clubs, corporate groups, what have you. People who get all dressed up and all fancy and all polite, who don't do what is right. This is what the Lord says. As for the prophets who lead my people astray, they proclaim peace if they have something to eat, but prepare to wage war against anyone who refuses to feed them. And that is in more than one way. Figuratively speaking, they prepare them for the slaughter by making them idolaters and lying to them. They prepare them for Nebuchadnezzar, who said to swallow them whole. Therefore night will come over you without visions, and darkness without divination. The sun will set for the prophets, and the day will go dark for them. The seers will be ashamed, and the diviners disgraced. They will all cover their faces because there is no answer from God. But as for me, I am filled with power, with the Spirit of the Lord, and with justice and might, to declare to Jacob his transgression, to Israel his sin. Hear this, you leaders of Jacob, you rulers of Israel, who despise justice and distort all that is right, who build Zion with bloodshed and Jerusalem with wickedness. Her leaders judge for a bribe, her priests teach for a price, and her prophets tell fortunes for money. Yet they look for the Lord's support and say, is not the Lord among us? No disaster will come upon us. Therefore, because of you, Zion will be plowed like a field. Jerusalem will become a heap of rubble. The temple hill a mound overgrown with thickets, as it is right now. Should you who claim to be the children of God not embrace justice? Should you not tell the truth about what is right instead of distorting it? Why build the nations of the world, globalists, Gentiles, and Jews alike? Why build it with injustice? Why build it with wickedness? Why ignore me? Why ignore God speaking through me? No matter what happens, I will be filled with power, with the Spirit of the Lord, and with justice and might, to tell the truth about things, to declare to the Jew and Gentile alike their transgressions, to declare to them that they are trapped, they are snared, they are caught in their wickedness, their backsliding rebukes them every moment of every day. Micah 5, a promised ruler from Bethlehem. Bethlehem is a play on words for Bet Hel-Ham, Hell bait him, right? Hell baits him. Betting, they're betting on hell instead of the champion, right? Siham Payan. He'll bite him, he'll beat him, he'll be at him. Hail, beat, hail, right? Hail will sweep away their refuge to lie. Ham, bite, hail, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of connections there in the wordplay. And we see that that's discussed in various Bible websites, right? For example, atonement, instead to be a play on words for at one, meant meaning mind, like in the word mental. And we see in Bible Gateway the various cryptograms and anagrams that are discussed. Marshal your troops now, city of troops, for a siege is laid against us. They will strike Israel's ruler on the cheek with a rod. But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old, from ancient times, right before Abraham I am, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. Therefore Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor bears a son, and the rest of his brothers return to join the Israelites. And will stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord and the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they will live securely, for then his greatness will reach to the ends of the earth. And he will be our peace when the Assyrians invade our land and march through our fortresses. Now some people, they don't understand that I'm the only one who knows what they're saying. For example, if somebody tried to describe what it's like to be surfing the biggest wave there ever was. If it ever was surfed, it was only surfed by one person. That person would understand it better than other people, right? Because that's the person that did it. So when we're talking about God, and we're talking about the top martial artist ever possible, we're talking about the Lord as a warrior, the Lord marches out like a champion, when we're talking about the essence of divine martial arts, you could have studied the Bible for 100 years. You still would not know what you're talking about. You could speak Hebrew and Greek and look at the original transcripts and you still would not know what you're talking about. What they're talking about is something that I am the master of, that I'm the one who lives it, not anyone else. They don't live universal pinpoint and moral precision. They don't know what it's like to be the top martial artist ever possible. It says all who wish to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. They don't know what it's like to be persecuted for doing what is morally precise. Outside the gates are the cowardly, among other people, right? Sexually immoral, what have you. They don't know what it's like to tell the truth and to be brave and to taste bravery. They don't know what they're talking about. I know what it's talking about. They don't. The kingdom of heaven is not a matter of talk or the tree of knowledge. The kingdom of heaven is a matter of martial and spiritual power. So those who don't have martial and spiritual power, they look really silly trying to argue that somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about. Because what they're getting at has to do with the sword of Scripture. It has to do with martial arts, not mere poetry or mere craftsman thinking or nerds or whatever. It has to do with intensity, martial intensity, morals, mental, spiritual, martial, and romantic intensity. It goes on to say that they will bring up against them 7 shepherds, even 8 commanders, who will rule the land of Assyria with the sword, the land of Nimrod with drawn sword. He will deliver us from the Assyrians when they invade our land and march across our borders. The remnants of Jacob will be in the midst of many people like dew from the Lord, like showers on the grass, which do not depend for anyone or depend on man. The remnant of Jacob will be among the nations in the midst of many people, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a lion among flocks of sheep, which mauls and mangles as it goes, and no one can rescue, right? The Lion of Judah. It's not talking about using mere technology or being in the IDF or the American military. It's not talking about trying to build the Riviera where Palestine is. That is senseless. I'm sure we can all agree that that's not being holy. What it's talking about is divine martial arts. So when you compare Bibi Netanyahu and the IDF and the Mossad and the CIA and the American military, right, to the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order, surely you know that I'm holy and they're not. Surely you know this. Like it says in Proverbs 34, whose hands have gathered up the wind, who has gone up to heaven and come back down, who holds the wind in his fists, who's wrapped up the waters in a cloak. It says, surely you know, because it's obvious. The difference is obvious. The truth of the matter is obvious. That's why martial is marital scramble, deny Christ and the bridegroom. My dad is from Nigeria. He's not from England. He's not from Rome. But yet in their language, the word martial is marital scramble. White people aren't known for having a long martial art history. But yet in their language, the word martial is marital scramble. And I, Christ and the bridegroom. In their Latin-rooted language, And the reason why it's scrambled and hidden in plain view in the occult tradition is because the Greeks and the Romans, right? The Greeks is where they overlap with the Romans and the other peoples in the area. They crucified Christ in the Latin language, Latin-based language tradition, if you will. And that's why it talks about how the language of Christ, and we'll get to that, is foreign to the Jews. So some people might think, hey, he doesn't know what he's talking about because my language is foreign to them. My language is the language of God, and their language is the language of mere scribes and craftsmen and nerds and jocks and things of that nature, worldly people who allow worldly mosques, synagogues, and churches. And I'm not saying this to offend anybody. I'm doing the work of God. And part of that is to turn back the battle at the gates. And I am the gate. Those who obey God through me come through me, and they find pasture. No one can get through heaven but by me. Just like no one can get to the Garden of Eden but by going past the cherubim with the flaming sword. This is the fact of the matter. This is the truth of the matter. Okay. Your hand will be lifted up in triumph over your enemies, and all your foes will be destroyed. In that day, declares the Lord, I will destroy your horses from among you, and demolish your chariots. I will destroy the cities of your land and tear down all your strongholds. I will destroy your witchcraft, and you will no longer cast spells. I will destroy your idols and your sacred stones from among you. You will no longer bow down to the work of your hands. I will uproot from among you your Asherah poles when I demolish your cities. I will take vengeance and anger and wrath on the nations that have not obeyed me. Now, some of you, you're waiting for something that is less impressive than what is going on right now. You're waiting for the world to be literally destroyed. When I was younger, I used to believe that when I was a kid. I thought that the world was probably going to be literally destroyed, and that's what it meant when Christ came back. But you got to understand this saying right here. This proves me right here about the new heaven and the new earth, what have you. It's the saying is this, right? A fate worse than death. A fate worse than death. What is worse than the world being destroyed? What causes people to stone people to death in the Bible? Witchcraft and sorcery, cowardice, falsehood. For people to choose witchcraft and to hook their children up to machines out of cowardice is a fate worse than death. Whether they're directly hooked to the machine or remotely through maybe nanotechnology or frequencies or whatever they would use. So the earth is being destroyed because they're handed over to a fate worse than death. Imagine me in my glory, about 6'4", 100, maybe 95 pounds or so in my glory. Ripped, most defined person to ever live when you consider the distance, long arms, what have you. Looks different than on a short Asian gentleman like Bruce Lee or something, Jackie Chan. The top martial artist ever possible's body. Forged with martial arts strikes in my heart, from God through my heart. Morally precise, intense, romantic. So romantic that the women of the earth couldn't even fathom what they're seeing, to the point where they rejected me for mere cowards, mere conformists, mere child molesters and their allies, people that beat them and raped their kids. Just they couldn't understand what they're seeing. Often they would say, why do they have such bad dating judgment? They couldn't see God in me. Because like it says in Hebrews, without holiness, no one will see the Lord. Now imagine some sniveling, smirking worm, some whimpering punk. Doesn't know what it means to be a man, doesn't know what it means to love a woman, doesn't know what it means to have heart, to have maturity and timing and discipline and sense and insight and wisdom. That's a fate worse than death. And God made me great, and He made them a whimpering punk. That's a fate worse than death. And now they got to look at their offspring with no way to be a man. They're far better off having been wiped out a long time ago than to still be here far too punk-like, far too pussy, far too much of a pansy to do God's work where it matters most. Coming from a long line of people like that, that's a fate worse than death. Looking at their offspring, okay, and knowing that they're too cowardly to stop breeding and stop following the crowd, And they'll keep breeding nothing but punks. The prophets refer to them saying they're like dung on the ground. It's a fate worse than death to turn your back on God when I, Christ, have returned. It's a fate worse than death to play stupid about the fact that the word marshal is the word marital scrambled, and that I, Christ, am the bridegroom. It's a fate worse than death to pretend that people in the churches are in God's spirit, when God's spirit is a warrior spirit. It's an intense Lion of Judah, powerful warrior spirit. It's a fate worse than death to be tail tucked when Armageddon has arrived. Pretty straightforward. So when it says, I will take vengeance and anger and wrath on the nations that have not obeyed me, that is happening right now, as people are living lives that are fates worse than death, and they're too damn stupid to understand that. That's why it says in Proverbs, anyone who hates correction is stupid. They said, if you hate God's correction, that you're stupid. And in this video, have I corrected them? You betcha. Do they reject that correction? You betcha. Because they're stupid. And being stupid in that sort of way is a fate worse than death. Now let me just end this by talking about different forms of intelligence so you understand that I'm right. See, the school system is rigged to benefit certain people with certain forms of intelligence. You can be the smartest person that ever lived and get all F's. That's literally how it's designed. Because they don't understand different methods of learning, different forms of learning, different forms of intelligence. There's existential intelligence, intelligence in regards to why you're here. There's spatial intelligence, how 3D objects relate in nature. There's intrapersonal and interpersonal intelligence, understanding yourself and others. There's logical, mathematical. There's bodily kinesthetic, your ability to kind of masterfully move your body. You might say martial arts, ballet, there's various forms of it. There's naturalist intelligence, your ability to understand nature. So there's various forms of intelligence. And the highest form of intelligence is moral wisdom, the ability to be morally precise. What's more impressive than someone with moral power, with moral conviction, moral clarity, moral will? That is the highest form of intelligence, wisdom derived from righteousness, true wisdom, the wisdom of God, the wisdom that comes with being honest enough to purify yourself in the Spirit of God. Thank you.